Soyez les bienvenus, chers téléspectateurs, dans l'interview d'Africa 24 qui reçoit un nouvel invité, un invité anglophone. Kola KARIM, welcome.
Thank you.
You are a managing director and CEO of Shoreline Energy International.
Correct.
So we'll talk about your activities through questions that are here. Can you read out loud, please, the first one? It makes you laugh.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm doing this. What are the plans of Shoreline Energy International for the next 5 years?
Yes.
Very interesting. I think first is Shoreline Energy International is an integrated infrastructure and energy company on the continent. Our focus in the next 5 years is taking the opportunities that Africa has today.
What opportunity does Africa have?
Africa's
today?
growing. Africa's creating more middle class than anywhere else on the planet today. And that is helping fuel the growth of companies like Shoreline using these opportunities to grow. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Our focus, one of our business areas is power sector. Think about it. Africa's growth is going to be based on adding additional power generation, power distribution to the capacity available today to continue the growth on the continent. Another area is infrastructure. We need to build additional adequate infrastructure from roads to hospitals, rail on the continent. So to keep fostering our growth on the continent, Africa's position is what we're working on at Shoreline.
Where exactly in the continent?
All over.
You're not present in all the countries?
No, we're present in Nigeria, in Ghana, Namibia, Kenya, Uganda, Angola.
All the countries ending with the A, you're
Correct.
there.
That's amazing, thinking about that. But now we're looking at, we're looking by virtue of language. It was a problem looking at Francophone Africa, but something has happened the last couple of years. Africa is now opening its doors for other Africans to do in business, and so is Francophone Africa. We're looking.
So Francophone African countries were closing their doors?
Yeah, because by virtue of language, traditionally their business partners are France or Belgium.
But maybe you were knocking at their doors.
You're right, but now we started knocking. I've gone to Gabon. I'm knocking on the door in Gabon.
And somebody opened?
Well, they're opening slowly. It's a slow process, but I'm sure they will open fully. The same in Côte d'Ivoire.
And when you knock at the door, what are you proposing? What are you telling them?
I'm telling them the same story. I'm telling them as an African that belongs and understands Africa, I am bringing two things. I'm bringing my ability to attract an international capital and local capital in deployment locally to creating jobs, value within that society. That's what I'm bringing to the table.
And the fact that, for example, you're coming from Nigeria, right? And that at some point the Nigerian companies or people are not well seen in other countries. Is that an issue for you or not at all?
Look, it's always going to be an issue, but the difference is clear. This generation of Nigerians, my generation of Nigerians, we're different. We do business differently. Our attitude is different. Our focus is different. So the acceptance of my generation of Nigerians on the continent of Africa is different. And that's why we're seeing results. You look at the Nigerian groups going out into Africa, Dangote and cement. We're in a necessity business. It's not about friendship. It's about doing good, valued business that will add value to those societies. And that's the same model we're using.
Next question, please. It's not a question, actually. You read it, you will understand.
Let's see. My knowledge of Nigeria and Africa is the key of my success.
These are your words.
Correct.
So what exactly do you know about Africa? Because you keep on saying, talking about the way you know Africa.
Look, what I did is spending a lot of time traveling in Africa. Because you see, the reality is, my description and analogy of Africa is like a dirty pair of shoes. If you have a dirty pair of shoes, you can't see the beauty. My view of Africa is that pair of shoes when you clean it. So I spend time cleaning African shoes, traveling to see the beauty. And what I realized is this: if Africa can continue growing without good roads, without electricity, without adequate infrastructure, and yet as a continent we're growing at 5% and above, then you can understand the value we will have if Africa has all this infrastructure, if we have good roads, if we have adequate power. Think about it. That's the opportunity.
So that's what you want to build.
My focus is to take the opportunities that Africa has thrown to us, natural resources. One of our businesses is oil and gas.
Yes.
My focus, irrespective of the price of oil and gas internationally, is to continue to grow and invest in energy resources right across Africa. And that is why we've just created a new partnership with Canadian Overseas Petroleum.
Yes.
We're now in Namibia, we're in Tanzania, we're looking at Uganda, and my focus is looking at Côte d'Ivoire and Gabon.
Côte d'Ivoire and Gabon. Why those two countries?
I'll tell you,
priority.
Côte d'Ivoire, as an example, has humongous gas reserves that needs to be recaptured, processed, and fed into the power plants where there's a power deficit in Côte d'Ivoire. Those two businesses we're in, power and in the gas. So if you look at the interface, it creates value, and it brings value to Côte d'Ivoire. Gabon. Gabon is an amazing energy-rich country. But what you see is how many African businesses or how many African-owned oil companies are running and operating in these countries. We want to be in the fore as an African business, two, as an African entrepreneur on the continent of Africa, where we could create value and deploy capital in creating effective returns.
But are you really an African company?
We are. I'm a Nigerian company traveling Africa.
Traveling Africa?
Yes.
But are you helping Africa to grow, or are you helping Occidental investors to make profits?
Both. You see, there are two things. Without the international capital, you cannot get the right investment for Africa. Two, without the right international capital looking for effective returns on investment, how do you finance the power plant in Cameroon? How do you finance the rail in Nigeria? How do you finance the gas to power in Côte d'Ivoire?
We cannot find it in Africa.
The capital in Africa is not enough. It is coming. It's a gradual process, but one thing is clear. Africa has opportunities that is attractive enough to the world, but something has changed in Africa the last 15 years. The single tenet of democracy is in Africa. Rule of law today, it's not perfect, but it's there. One important position in Africa is we have the fastest growing middle class, plus we have 50% of sub-Saharan Africa under the age of 30.
Yes.
So if you put all that together, it tells you you have a marketplace that could be creative and active for the next 30, 40 years. That is a very attractive market.
But is it really a win-win between the investors in Africa?
Look, you can't have a win and lose position, but everyone's got to win. Africa gets the investment, the foreign direct investment. The investor gets returns. But more importantly, Africa gets the business done.
And what do you get?
I make profits. It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Right? It's got to be attractive to go to these economies to make money. Let me give you an example. If I told you as an investor, come to my country, come and invest money, but you make zero, would you come? No, you wouldn't.
Maybe if I love the country.
Oh, yes, yes. It's interesting, you know. Go through history. Nobody invests for love. They invest for returns, but more importantly, there's a commitment here. And seriously speaking, the commitment is from my heart as an African, that we have to make a difference on the continent, and we're the only ones. Imagine if many of us are seen going cross-border investing. Imagine what the outside world sees. They need to do more to support it. And that's the reality.
I have the joker question that will end this interview. How are you dealing with the fall in prices in the Lagos Stock Exchange?
Look, if you look at the stock market, prices go up and down. It's a global thing. Something is happening in Nigeria. Look, we've had a fundamental crash in global prices of oil. The mainstay of foreign exchange to Nigeria is oil. Over 70% is underpinned by the oil. And if the oil prices is dropped by over 55, 60%, then you can imagine our earning capacity is gone down by the same. So inherently, the currency had to be devalued systemically. But what are we doing And what the government is doing is trying to diversify the income, foreign exchange income stream into the economy. So in turn, what you find by doing so is foreign investors are selling so they don't get devalued too much and taking their money out. But it's a short-term thing.
You think so?
Oh yes, because the fundamentals of these businesses are there. If the businesses have the right fundamentals, the only difference is the foreign exchange risk. And that in time closes up. Because think about it, if oil prices go back up again, the Nigerian economy takes in more dollars, then there's confidence, so-called comes back in again. So it's a cycle. That's what it is.
But right now you're concerned about it.
Yes, as an entrepreneur, of course you're concerned. Devaluation of any currency should concern anyone.
Yes.
But are we running away from the economy? No.
No?
Well, no, not at all. We're investing even more because even at this time, there's a lot of opportunities that's coming. We just closed a transaction last week by acquiring the first privately owned airport in West Africa, and that's in Nigeria. Okay. Why are we doing it? Because we believe in the economy. That's very important. So we're looking everywhere we see value that we can invest capital to make effective returns.
Kola KARIM, thank you so much for answering these questions.
Thank you.
Merci à vous, chers téléspectateurs. C'était l'interview d'Africa 24. À bientôt.